Hi everybody, welcome to Art Day. Happy Monday. I hope you're getting ready to be inspired for more character paintings of the DSA world. Today I'm painting Punino Brannthagen, who is the mercenary in our lovely gaming group. And well, from the description that I got from the game master, he is very quote-unquote dull when it comes to the colors and the kind of armor he's wearing. So he's wearing leather armor, nothing fancy, a lot of brown and a little bit of black. So I decided this time around I would paint the background first. For one, it's just a little easier for me to then have the characters stand out. I didn't do that last time because I just realized on the way that I had to paint the whole background, but that's in the previous video. I'm going to talk about that. So I did wet the whole area that I wanted to paint for him as the background, and I chose a very watered down Payne's gray to put into the background for him. He's a mercenary, so he's very used to being in towns and cities, but also on the battlefield, of course. So I wanted to give him more of like an urban background, but not saying that it's urban. So I went with grays for cobblestones or stone houses and such, city walls. I would also associate with grayish color, and the gray is a very lovely color. It's a very muted color that kind of makes other colors pop a little more. So it's a very neutral and very laid back kind of color. It's not wanting to steal the limelight. It's more of a supporting color, if you know what I mean. So I also went with the gray to make the browns that I'm gonna use on the mercenary pop a little more. There's a few, only very few colors that do that. You could use a very dark, very almost like, I would say an indigo blue that makes things pop. It's almost a grayish blue, but kind of like a midnight blue as well. So that works very well too for these kinds of background parts where you want other colors to pop that are in the foreground. Grays work really, really well, and some beige tones too, but you got to be careful with those. Too reddish or too yellowish, and they're, well, not gonna be as much in the background, and they're gonna pop a little more and distract from the focal point or from a character in this case. So these are a few colors, the blue, dark blues and the grays, that really work well. You're gonna see that, I think, once I do have the watercolor bits of Punino down, and you can see what it looks like just before I put in some gel pens at the very end. Excuse me. So moving on to the mercenary himself, I'm still painting with my Schminke watercolor, Schminke Academy watercolors. My favorite set. There's lovely earthy, natural kind of colors in there that I really like to use when doing landscapes, but also medieval character paintings or even portraits. I like them a lot. There's a few colors in there I don't use that often on these quote-unquote natural kind of paintings, but I love them for, say, flowers or painting objects or things like that. So the whole set is used in this case. So I'm starting off with a cool brown, which I like a lot, and that I also used on the elf 2 weeks ago. And I'm gonna put down like that kind of color all over the place, have color repetition to make the painting look harmonic and cute and lovely and put together. Sorry, I had to drink a sip. And then I'm gonna choose, like right now, I'm gonna choose other browns that are more vivid, more on the warmer part of the spectrum. So this one here is burnt umber. You can already see it's way more brownish, reddish, quite light too. And I think it's a very nice contrast to, for one, the dark brown that I put in, but also the background, the gray. You can see that umber already pops against the gray background, and brown itself is also a muted color. It's more of a color that moves into the background or is a support color, quote unquote support color, but you can make it pop by having even more neutral and quiet colors in your painting. So I did the undershirt and the pants with that umber, part of the leather armor here, and I'm gonna move on to another brown in a hot minute when I paint other parts of the armor. So though I'm mostly painting Punino with only browns, there's enough contrast and enough interest at the end, because I'm choosing different kinds of browns, different shades when it comes to red or yellow being more prominent in the mixture. And I'm also choosing different colors when it comes to the light. So you can see here I'm using a yellow ochre, which sits in between yellow and brown. So I would classify it more as a brown, not a yellow per se. It's just a very light, very yellowish brown. And that, well, pops into the foreground right away. So your view is directed to the mercenary's chest in this case, not so much his legs or arms, face at this point. I mean, once I have painted the face, the face is also popping and your eyes are directed there. But during this painting process, you can see wherever I put down that yellow ochre, your eyes are directed to that area. All the other colors move into the background. They're way more quiet and supporting. Before I put in the yellow ochre, the burnt umber did that job. So it always depends on what colors you put next to each other, what colors you make as your focal colors, like the one color that draws in the eye of the viewer. And by putting the right or very good colors next to each other, and by having one color that really pops in comparison to all the others, you can create a lot of interest on a on a painting. I'm losing my voice. Thank you, MS. I didn't want to lose my voice today. So yeah, I'm going with the same grays and a little bit of black for the sword, or better said, that sheath around the sword. I'm going a little more bluish on the sword itself, so it's all silver/metal. Also on the pistol there, but I'm switching between going more gray and going more blue. And that makes for a very subtle but very lovely difference in the painting. So I had to let things dry for a minute because I didn't want everything to bleed into each other. And then I chose a fourth brown color. You can see it's very different. It's very red. It's actually called English red, though it is kind of like a terracotta color, very reddish, but still brown. So when you mix brown, you have red, blue, and yellow. And depending on the ratio between the three pigments, you get more of a yellowish or a greenish or a reddish kind of a brown. And all of the other browns I used were not as heavy on the red as that English red is. So it pops out right away. Here's where I'm putting down some dark indigo blue for the metal of the sword, and I'm adding a little bit of the Payne's gray to it. So you have another color that pops, but at the same time plays well with the other colors and doesn't want to be in the foreground per se. And I really love indigo for that as well. You know that it's my favorite shading color, and I'm going to use it for shading in a minute. But it also works really well as kind of like a focal color, like separate one thing from all the other bits that you painted or colored. So there's a lot of earthy tones in this picture, but the blue is not earthy. It definitely says metal, and that makes things pop. So I'm using the same indigo that I used before on the sword. I'm going to use that here to shade my browns and such. So I'm just putting down color for now, and then I'm going to go in with only a damp brush, no color on it, and pull the pigment a bit to, well, make everything very smooth and blend it together. And I'm sorry for the bling in the background, but yeah, people are sending messages to me. I'm not gonna reply now. I'm gonna finish this voiceover first, but sorry for the background noise. Can be irritating, I know. So this is where I bring in my damp brush, as I had just stated, and blend the indigo with whatever color I had underneath. I'm not only using indigo as a shading color. In a little while you will see that I'm using browns too, especially on the yellow ochre parts. And I think that you could have very lovely effects with indigo blue on top of yellow ochre. I actually very much like that combination, but it would have been a little too harsh for me in this particular painting. So I opted for browns this time round to shade the yellow ochre. And I'm going with a rather light brown too. A very yellowish, because, well, I have yellow ochre underneath, but I just want the part of that jacket or that armor to be shaded a little bit. I'm gonna add a tiny bit of burnt umber, but mainly I just wanted to intensify the color of the yellow ochre, make it pop even more, just have a light part in the painting. So I'm adding a little more of color on the features, like his brown eyes, shading here and there, just tiny bits to separate all of the belts and items that he's wearing around his waist. Not have it be like a brown blob, but more like a person that is dressed with brown armor. Darkening up some of the parts, giving them a second layer of color, which is also a very lovely way of shading. And then I'm adding black for the ground, because I think he's standing on maybe like cobblestone or a street or something. So he's way more urban looking than the elf is, like on the right hand side. There's a huge difference, but both of them are on the quest together and doing their thing. So once that was dry, I just went in with little details, a little bit of gold for some of, like the belt buckle, for example, a little bit of silver watercolor pencil for the sword, just to have a little bit of a shimmer there. Just very minute, tiny details that I like to do at the very end of painting sessions. Also, like adding the pupils with a permanent marker and the highlights in the eyes with a white gel pen. These are the things I like to do as the last step, adding some more of the black liner or going over lines again where I used light watercolor, in this case yellow ochre, that kind of milk up those black lines, just getting them back and having them look crisp. I go over the line work again, and these are just tiny little details that I do at the end of every kind of painting or drawing that I do. So this pretty much ends the video here. At 10 a.m. CET, the blog post will be up with the list of all the supplies I used today, also naming the paper that I worked on and such. So hop on over to pinselgeschichten.de if you want to find out. In case you're watching this days after it is published or weeks after, just enter the video name into the search bar and you will be directed to the post right away, so you can find out things. I thank you very much for watching. Have a lovely day. I hope you got inspired and liked the video, and I'm gonna see you in 2 weeks.